Welcome to Most Popular, the podcast that combines the majesty of pop culture with the sexiness that is academic study. I couldn't even say that without laughing. I'm Dr. Adria Trier-Bieniek. I'm your host. In case you are hearing this for the first time, I am a real-life college professor of sociology, which I don't know why I said real life, like someone would try and fake being me. And I created this podcast to combine my two loves, pop culture and the impact it has on our lives. Today I am talking with my friend Dr. Michael Gillespie. Michael is a professor of sociology and the director of the Faculty Development and Innovation Center at Eastern Illinois University. He's also an expert in food inequality, or the way that food becomes something that is only available at times to specific groups. In all honesty, I was inspired to talk with Michael about this after reading a story about the rise in popularity of the cronut, which, if you're not familiar, is half cronut, half croissant, and half donut. I thought that surely this was a silly phenomenon until I discovered that this dessert has been around for a decade, and at one point it was being sold for $40 a cronut in New York City. $40. That's like one movie in 2023. I started to think about fad foods and how all of this connects to people who either don't have anything to eat or don't have enough to eat. And this is a distinction that Michael will explain. So thus, this discussion was born. I really hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much for listening. Oh, no. Hello, Michael. Welcome to Most Popular. I'm so excited to have you here.
So excited. I feel most popular.
If you could see the line on the software that tells me how loud I'm being, it just shot all the way to red because my level of excitement is so crazy.
Awesome.
So thank you for being my first guest. I could not
Uh,
have thought of anybody I wanted to do this with more. So
well, thank you. It's an honor.
let's do a few basic questions because, like I think I said in my email, not everybody understands the ins and outs and the what food inequality means. So let's just do a few standard questions so that we can all get on the
Sure.
same page. So
Sure.
what is food insecurity? What does that mean?
Um, so food insecurity is essentially when the availability of nutritious, adequate, and safe food is unavailable.
Mm-hmm.
The United States Department of Agriculture, which actually oversees many of the food programs in our country, defines food security as the access by all people at all times for enough food for an active, healthy life, and that goes for an entire household.
Mm-hmm.
So you can think of food insecurity as the opposite of that, where that enough food for that active, healthy life is unavailable or it's threatened.
So then how does that connect to SNAP? Because I know you talked about how you look at SNAP and you also look at food insecurity. Yeah.
Well, SNAP is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which is more commonly known as food stamps.
Yeah.
And food stamps, or SNAP, exists to sort of bridge the gap between what households or individuals have available
Mm-hmm.
and if they're underneath what the U.S. Department of Agriculture deems as the minimum subsistence diet.
Okay.
And there's different ways to figure that out, and it's got a long, dark history of how that goes. But essentially, if you fall under a certain level of the poverty line, then you're deemed to not have sufficient access to the resources needed to get enough food. And SNAP exists in its essence to bridge that gap. So depending on what your income is, either as an individual or as a household, your SNAP benefits are only the amount of money to bridge that gap. So some people get $10 a month. Some people get hundreds of dollars a month, just depending upon
Mm-hmm.
where you fall.
How does all of this apply to college students?
Well, college students are a special population, and food insecurity sort of affects different populations differently. Certainly, single mothers who live in urban areas are a little different than college students who live on or near a college campus.
Yeah.
Um, and another thing about food insecurity is that it looks different to everyone, and it's sort of hard to distinguish.
Mm-hmm.
You can't see it necessarily unless you kind of know what you're looking for. So food insecurity for college students oftentimes looks like the inability to get nutritionally adequate food,
Mm-hmm.
um, not by choice, but by circumstance. So I often talk to my students when I'm telling them about this, that we have those students who show up to class with a bag of Doritos and a Red Bull for breakfast
Right.
because that's what they like to eat. The difference between choosing to have that and only having access to something like that is the difference between food security and food insecurity.
Right.
It's definitely not nutritionally adequate. It's definitely not good for an active lifestyle. But if you have the choice to eat that versus that's all you have to eat,
Yes.
is the difference between food insecurity and not.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny as you were saying that. On the one hand, I was thinking, yeah, it's a choice, right? It's a choice to eat that for breakfast. On
Right.
the other hand, I had this flashback to my high school breakfast, which used to be Sunny D and Cheetos.
Right. Yeah.
And that was, adequate for me, but obviously something I
Right.
made the decision to eat.
Right.
Um,
Right. And 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 to sort of build on that idea too. I mean, a lot of times people have a hard time thinking, how can college students be food insecure?
right.
Well, college
Mm-hmm.
students today are a lot different than when you and I were in college
Yeah.
and even in high school and working 1, 2, 3 jobs just to make ends meet. The cost of college is so much more.
Mm-hmm.
And not everybody can afford the meal plan on campus, especially if they live on campus. On my campus, meal plans vary in price based on how much you get. And the lowest one, which is the one that is the most purchased and the most popular, you only get 2 meals a day on it. So what are you going to do for
Really?
that third meal? Yeah, what are you going to do
Yeah.
for that third meal? And so that's definitely not enough food. And our food, I mean, I've eaten in our food and dining halls before, and they're pretty good, but still, what are you going to be able to fill that gap with?
Yeah, I suspect that's probably exponentially bigger when, like, my college does it. My college is a commuter campus, so
Right,
there's no food plan,
right,
there's no meal
and
plan.
that yeah, and that just compounds it more because it's daily life, right? And
Mm-hmm.
they're going about their normal life. Plus, oh, by the way, I have to figure out how to feed everybody in my family. I'm sure that you have non-traditional students.
Yep.
Um, and college is something that's happening alongside
Life.
everything else.
Mm-hmm.
We get a lot of commuters too, a lot of transfer students. We have a lot of first generation college students who
Mm-hmm.
are still just trying to, figure out how in the world they're able to pay their tuition fees, let alone, put enough food in their belly to be a successful student.
You kind of alluded to this a little bit, but it's making me wonder, especially for folks who maybe want to discuss this more in class, what are the myths, do you think, that are surrounding food insecurity with college students?
Well, I think we have an idealized vision of college in our society.
Yeah.
That 4-year institution, you go off and you do your studies and then you leave, you get a job and life is good. But that's the ideal. And it's not the reality for many students. It wasn't for me. It wasn't for most of the students that I've worked with and that I talked to, not just from my school at Eastern Illinois University, but across other schools where I've worked with students as well. The myth today is that it's not just showing up, taking classes, and going back to your dorm room and getting to study, but there's jobs,
Mm-hmm.
there's organizations, there's
Mm-hmm.
all sorts of different things you have to do just to be able to meet the expectations of society, internships, and everything costs money, and everything's infinitely more expensive. And so that money has to go somewhere. And if you're on a limited budget, which most students are, if you're on a limited budget, you really have to be savvy with where your money goes. And oftentimes, if a bill comes due for rent, or you got to make a car payment, or heaven forbid you get sick,
Right.
other times, things have to suffer. A lot of times that ends up being the food.
I think it's making me think that, everyone's memory of something is clearer and more perfect than it actually was. So it's very easy to say, well, when I went to
Oh yeah,
college, we just ate ramen and we were fine, you know?
yeah,
Um,
yeah. It's like that story an elder
yeah.
would say, I had to walk uphill
Yeah.
both ways in the snow to get to school. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I just took a pizza and that would last me a week,
right.
but that's not the reality. Everyone's memory is sort of fuzzy because, time changes things.
Yep,
And it sounds like when you start to pick it apart, you're dealing with bigger issues, right? Because you keep mentioning the cost
right,
of education. And
right.
we could talk for, I think, hours on
Yeah,
how educational institutions allocate their funds, and how that affects students. But it's kind of one of the indirect, results of education costs rising that we're
right,
not talking a lot about how that affects if students can eat or if they have enough to
right,
eat.
right, right. And if you're sitting in class and you're hungry because you haven't eaten since
Hmm.
lunch the day before, your ability to pay attention and to absorb material is going to be dominated by that hunger pain in your stomach and the growling and the distraction about when you're going to get to eat next.
That's a really good transition to the charts and graphs you sent me, which I'll
Yeah,
put up on the website. I'm going to read a few of them, and we can talk about how you came to the data and what it means.
yeah,
But you said food insecure students sometimes are often 89% worry about running out of food, 85% could not afford to eat balanced meals, and 86% cut the size of skipped meals because of money. And then what I
right.
thought was really interesting, a couple of things I thought was really interesting. You had this progress toward graduation with students who are food secure versus students who are food insecure. And
Hmm.
progress toward graduation for food insecure students is a lot less,
Yeah,
77% to 90%. I mean, that's a big gap if you're talking about
yes,
just in terms of I mean, we're professors, we think about life in terms of grades, 90% as an A, 77% as a
right.
C. That's a big jump.
Absolutely. And for those of us who like statistics and work with this stuff, it is statistically significant. It
Oh
is
yeah.
that large of a gap. That it's, one of the things that I'm interested in with what I do is how do we set students up to be successful?
Mm-hmm.
And part of the structure of the survey, the way that I have it is those responses were how they feel. They
Yeah.
were attitude types of responses, and that clear difference of students who feel like they're making adequate progress towards graduation is so different between this line between food security and food insecurity. Um, the data, in terms of finishing credit hours and how much they actually have objectively, I didn't look at. But if you feel like you're not making progress, right, and plus you're struggling in all these other aspects of your life, how is that going to impact your ability to be a college student and to live that college student life and to feel successful in what you're doing and come out at the end feeling like you've accomplished something?
So I guess I'd like you to talk a little bit about what led you to doing
Yeah.
this, how your
Um,
path to this research.
well, I've always been interested in issues of poverty and food and hunger. Ever since I was an undergraduate student, the first sociology class I took after I declared my major was the sociology of poverty and inequality,
Mm,
and it changed my world. And ever since then, I've been interested in this. My family, we weren't by any means poor where I grew up, but we were definitely blue collar, and we definitely struggled. And there was times when my parents were laid off, and we kind of had to cut back. So it's always been uh, close to my own personal experience, and it's something I've always been interested in, just learning more and understanding. Because it just, our inability to have a society that's more equal for everybody just mystifies me when there's so much
Yeah.
available
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
be able to do that. So in terms of the college students specifically, it was probably about 7, maybe 8 years ago. Um, it was finals week. It was coming up to the holidays. It was the end of the fall semester. And I was getting ready to go give my statistics final. One of my students walked into my office, and they looked like they had just been rung through the ringer. They looked tired,
Mm-hmm.
bags under their eyes, there's
Mm-hmm.
ashen sort of skin, just really pale. And I knew right away what was going on. And they were struggling studying for the exam and had a couple questions, and I stopped them, and I had rapport with the student. And they were one of our top students, actually graduated with honors and everything. And I just said, listen, what's going on? You look sick. You don't look like yourself. And they told me that that they hadn't eaten in a day and a half. The last thing they ate was a can of cold SpaghettiOs,
Oh, wow.
and they had just gotten their food stamp benefit taken away.
Wow.
So they were really struggling.
Yeah.
And so I had a conversation with them and just kind of started digging around, reading through some of the available research, and that was the start of it. And I've been doing this research now for a couple of years, and trying to be a good advocate and activist for my students on campus,
Yeah.
because we're making sure they get fed.
So this is a good transition too. Can you talk about the food pantry that you started? Because you started in your office, right?
Right. Yeah. So because of that one encounter, I talked to my colleagues, and we decided that we were going to have a departmental food pantry.
Mm-hmm.
We still don't have one on campus. It's been a long fight, and
Yeah.
we've gone through several layers of administration and things, and we're not backing down on this yet. But
Yeah.
I talked to my colleagues and asked them, and told them what happened. Asked them if they would be willing to donate either some food or some money, and then I could go buy some, and then I'd be more than happy to oversee it in my office. And that's what we did. And I still have food in my office. Since then, we've been able to collaborate with other departments and offices around campus so that it's not so centralized to us.
Yeah.
But we have food all over campus now, in people's offices and program offices. And we worked with our local food pantry to be open one night a week after hours. So they're open from 5:30 to 7 p.m. to serve students who might be in class during the day and couldn't make it, but other community members that worked at different hours to have an opportunity to go to the food pantry as well. And we provide transportation from campus to get there too.
Wow.
And we also got a food pantry put in the basement of a local Catholic church, which is right across the street from campus. And
So
we're
it's
doing a lot
easy
of work with them.
access. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm going to ask you, when we first started talking about you doing this with me, I cannot lie.
Yeah.
I cannot lie. I was thinking in my head, I want to do a show where I can talk about the cronut and all of these silly food trends. And how can I
Yeah.
divert that to something serious that is like an
Yeah.
actual, with some meat to it conversation. But I also
Sure.
am fascinated by the intro to this episode, which you'll hear when the whole episode is spliced together. I talk about how every channel now has some sort of cupcake war show going on, or some
Yeah.
sort of, baking show. Your bread, I feel someday should be a part of these things. But so I sent you this question, and I'm dead serious. When we talk about
Yeah.
stuff like the cronut or all these fancy ingredients, I get food meal kits delivered to my house once a week,
Yeah.
every once in a while, because I putting a menu together for the week. This is such a privileged position, and I'm aware of that, but putting menus together for the week is very overwhelming for me. So,
Yeah.
but a lot of times they have these fancy ingredients that there is no way I could go out and buy without dropping $8 on, like, you know, a 1 ounce container of
Yeah.
something. So
Yeah.
are these fun exercises? Are they representative of a bigger social inequality, i.e., my privilege of being able to have a meal kit sent to my house? Are they just fun? Are they frivolous? Do they have a bigger picture that you could think of? What do you think?
See, it would be great. It would be great if it was more democratic in a way, because
Mm-hmm.
we have choices, and I could definitely get these meal kits ordered, and I see boxes around town where I live, and they're on people's porches when they get delivered, and it really is a special position. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we are privileged people, and that's the thing. I liken it to what it would be like to shop on a food stamp budget. Okay.
Yeah.
And if I receive food stamps, I can't go to the corner artisan bakery
Yep.
and pull out my electronic card
Yep.
and order a cronut.
Right.
I can go to the grocery store and get the prepackaged
Mm-hmm.
powdered donuts that were made 3 months ago in a factory far, far away.
Right.
Similar experience, probably some similar ingredients, completely different class level. And like so much, food is very class-based.
Yes.
You can walk through the grocery stores, at least the ones I'm familiar with, and there'll actually be tags on the shelves that say what is eligible if you are using food stamps,
Mm-hmm.
or if you're using WIC, which is the Women, Infants, and Children's Program. And if I'm going in, and some, I'll be honest, I'll buy some of that stuff just because it's cheap and easy.
Yeah.
But if I'm a discerning shopper and I have that sort of feel about the world, I'm not going to pick that stuff out.
Right.
Especially if I have the choice.
Right.
So it is quite a privilege, and food is a good marker of class.
Yes.
And I would err on the former, that it's fun, right? It's neat to go have a treat, but when you have the choice or not to, it's a lot different than when you don't have that choice at all.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that treat is the marker of the social class too, right? Like I can afford avocado
right.
toast, or I can afford beet chips or something.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening. You can find more episodes of Most Popular on iTunes and SoundCloud. More information, including additional resources for educators, can be found on my website, which is Trier-Bieniek.com. The website is linked in episode notes in case you want to know how to spell it. And I am on Instagram at dr.adriennetb. That's at dr.adrientb. Thank you so much to my students for the encouragement to keep making these episodes, and I will see you all next time.